number 10, we have the legend of the pink slime. You must have seen those pictures of horrifying looking pink slime being troughed in a factory. At first people are like, oh okay cool, strawberry milkshake, a bit gross, but you know. However, reportedly this goo is what forms the meat in chicken nuggets. Grim. The pink slime is said to be mechanically separated chicken smashed and processed through a sieve. It isn't just meat either. Reportedly the pink goo contains eyes, guts and other bits of offal. When this picture was circulated, a lot of people were thoroughly grossed out. Now McDonald's changed their ways in the early 2000s, no longer using mechanically separated meat and constantly refuting the pink slime allegations. However, with the scary image out there, it's one of those truth-based urban legends that I don't think they'll ever shake off. Coming into number 9, we have the McGangbang. I'm sorry, what? What on earth is the McGangbang? A good question. To be honest, I think that the name of this urban legend is scarier than the actual legend itself. Either way, you may have heard people talking about McDonald's secret menu items. Sure. Fine, apparently they exist, I guess. One menu item that caught media attention is the alleged McGangbang. What a name, what a sandwich. The much discussed McGangbang is a combo of McChicken and a double cheeseburger. There have been videos of this mystery burger too. The sandwich became so entrenched in urban legends that 8 News even ran a segment on it. It turns out it's all a myth though. McDonald's has never formally admitted that they even have a secret menu. It seems that people have been just fusing their chicken and beef patties together to form their own sandwich. The 8 News segment is hilarious though. There's one lady who finds the name a disgrace. A disgrace!
The name itself, it's like, I don't know, it turns you off. Especially if people have morals.
Coming in at number 8, we have the mystery drive-thru girl. This is a particularly good McDonald's creepypasta. The story goes that one day, a guy stopped at a McDonald's drive-thru and paid for his sausage breakfast burrito on his debit card. A young female employee rang it up, and when she handed him his card back, he noticed it was really hot. He thought this was really weird, but the girl had moved from the window. There were cars behind him beginning to beep, and he didn't want to cause a fuss. He did a double whammy that day and ordered Taco Bell for lunch. When he handed his card over, the cashier recoiled as if it burnt them. Weird, he thought. Again, he just carried on with his life. Later, he saw on the news that a Taco Bell worker in his area had a horrible accident and had fallen into a vat of boiling oil. He got deep fat fried, which is not ideal. He then watched the news segment and realized that it was the guy who had served him earlier that day. Really creepy. Then the guy went to Walmart to do some groceries. Now he'd popped in the night before to buy a few bits for dinner, but that evening he wanted to do a full shop. When he arrived, there was a police cordon. A member of staff had been found hanged. Crazed paranoia was now running through his head, and he decided to visit the gas station that he'd been to and used his card in on his way home the night before. When he got there, he went in and asked to speak to the cashier who'd been helping him the day before. A different worker said that they'd gone home sick later that night and they hadn't come in for their shift that day. The writer then said he knew it had something to do with the McDonald's girl and the debit card. He went back to McDonald's and asked for the girl, but the manager said that nobody fitting her description worked there or had ever worked there. Coming in at number 7, McDonald's spike their food with drugs to make it addictive. It's a classic story, isn't it? And to be honest, 15-20 years ago, I wouldn't have put it past them. Some people swear that McDonald's spiked their food with heroin to get people hooked, raising a whole nation or even a whole global nation to be dependent on their snacks. While this urban legend prevails, there is no proof that this is the case. There aren't any illegal chemicals used in McDonald's food. However, that being said, just because it isn't illegal doesn't mean it's great. McDonald's does purposely make its food addictive to the taste, and a whole bunch of chemicals deemed acceptable by the Food Safety Agency have been shoehorned into their food. One reason you might feel so addicted to fries is because of the hydrolyzed milk compound that produces MSG. Now MSG is seemingly an addictive substance, and it's used to enhance flavors and perpetuate food cravings. If you eat a bunch of McDonald's and find yourself wanting more, MSG might be the cause. Coming in at number 6, we have the legend of the screaming sign. One McDonald's restaurant out there in the USA is said to be haunted by a very angry ghost. In fact, it isn't so much the restaurant as it is the sign outside the restaurant. Now local law says it is the spirit of a disgruntled customer who was killed as they tried to walk through the drive-thru. Of course, one customer caught a short video of the sign screaming and screeching as it shows off the menu. To me, it's pretty scary. scary. This was uploaded on November the 23rd, 2017 by Floberson. I'd actually be terrified if I was the one videoing this. If there are any ghost hunters watching, why don't you let me know what this sign is saying? What are they trying to contact? Coming in at number 5, we have the legend of the Vermont fry cook. Urban legend has it that somewhere in Vermont in 1999, a fry cook walked into the middle of the restaurant and poured himself in scalding hot oil. He didn't even flinch when this happened, he just doused himself in it. The legend said that several of the customers started to laugh and roll around in the burning oil alongside of him, and all were rushed to hospital and died. But one. There is only one survivor who was doused in oil, and that woman lost the ability to speak, so she couldn't tell her story. Weirdly still, the manager of the restaurant claimed he didn't remember even hiring the fry cook and that he wasn't in any official paperwork. His name tag didn't even have a name on it, just several hashtags. Of course, on googling the incident, nothing surfaces. However, it is claimed that the McDonald's PR team were involved in a strict cover-up operation, burying the story. Coming into number 4, we've got more deep fat fryer action. We've got a worker who falls into the fryer and becomes a human crisp. Many people will tell stories about a friend of a friend who knew someone who worked at McDonald's and they died by falling into the deep fat fryer, and they were found the next day looking like a human chicken nugget. This is a popular urban legend, and I can almost guarantee it's in a movie somewhere, probably like Final Destination. If it isn't, then you can have that one for free on me. Despite this being textbook scary McDonald legend, there is some truth to these stories. Health and safety is getting a lot better, but people have in the past been very seriously injured by fast food chain fryers. In 2016 in Melbourne, a McDonald's worker made the news when she fell into a vat of 160 degrees Celsius oil. It seems that this restaurant's fryer drainage system was broken and that the oil was being drained into a huge bucket instead. Now, the employee walked by this bucket, slipped and fell into it. Now, the whole incident was caught on camera. The poor woman is seen screaming in pain and needing skin grafts on her arms and legs as a result of the accident. Sure, she might not have been turned into a human nugget, but the reality of this situation, the truth behind the urban legends, is horrifying. Coming into number 3, we have secret beef. There was an urban legend going around for years and years that McDonald's were mislabeling some of their food as vegetarian, and in fact, they were made with beef extract. Well, you may find some of the urban legends on this list far-fetched, but this was actually true. Why is this scary, Rebecca? Well, imagine being a vegetarian or a Hindu and thinking that you were eating something that coincided with your choices or your beliefs because the company tells you that they are. Then you find out that they lied and you've been putting something in your body that you don't believe in. What else could McDonald's have lied about as well? In 2002, McDonald's Corporation agreed to donate $10 million to Hindus and other groups to settle a lawsuit in which they were found guilty of mislabeling fries and hash browns as vegetarian. They were found to contain beef, and since then McDonald's has corrected the glaring error and both menu items are meat-free. Since 2002, they've also worked towards creating a more vegetarian-friendly menu. But again, if they were lying for decades, for me, this just isn't okay. What else could they be lying about? Coming into number 2, we have the legend of McDonald's starting the scary clown craze. A series of Japanese McDonald's commercials were accused of fostering the killer clown craze of 2016.
いつでもそこにマクドナルド
In the commercials, Ronald McDonald is straight up acting like a super creep. He places a number of weird calls and then he is seen lurking outside a woman's home a la creepy clown style. In another commercial, he is hiding under a woman's bed without her knowing, and another shows his creepy clown gloved hand opening a locked door from the inside. Anyway, McDonald's were called out for perpetuating the clown issue, with many saying that they straight up started it. In a statement released to tackle the rumors, McDonald's said, "McDonald's and franchisees in the local markets are mindful of the current climate around clown sightings in communities, and as such, they're being very thoughtful in respect to Ronald McDonald's participation in community events for the time being." So basically, after igniting the bonfire, Ronald was stepping back from the blaze to watch it burn. You're creepy, Ronald. You're creepy. Finally, coming into number 1, we have one of the most popular McDonald's urban legends around. We have the classic human finger in the burger. Haven't we all heard the one about someone finding a human finger in their food? You know how the urban legend goes. A kid goes into McDonald's with their mum, they order a Happy Meal, but as well as getting a toy car or a plushie or whatever, they find some kind of human body part nestled amongst their food. In 2014, some news publications claimed that a 5-year-old boy from Vermont discovered a human finger in his Happy Meal. The article in Empire News said that the boy's mother only discovered something was wrong when she found the finger in her son's mouth. The mother, Erica Silver, said he ate his nuggets and apple slices. When we got home, I noticed he was sucking on something. I thought at first it was an apple slice, but I screamed in horror when I pulled it out of his mouth to discover it was a finger. I'd know about this. Now the boy was taken to the emergency room and checked for illnesses. Where did the finger come from? Good question. Were people being chopped up and put into burgers? It's another classic urban legend. Now according to the same article, the restaurant manager said that he literally checked all of the employees' hands and all of them still had their fingers. He believed that the restaurant wasn't the cause of the problem, either the finger came further up the industrial ladder or the family themselves planted it in their meal. A lot of people called this story a hoax, but with the rumour mill constantly churning, it seems like a familiar story. Coming in at number 10, check out this haunted drive-thru with a screaming sign. Yikes. This short video clearly shows a McDonald's sign screaming and screeching as it shows off the menu. How scary. Uploaded on November the 23rd, 2017 by Prof. Balson, I would have been absolutely terrified if I was the one filming this. Like, listen again. Any ghost hunters watching this, what is this sign saying? Coming in at number 9, imagine being super glued to a McDonald's toilet. That is what happened to this poor 4-year-old. On New Year's Eve 2015, poor Kaya Langmead was left with a red raw bum as she was prized from McDonald's toilet seat. The little girl fell foul of a prank by 2 teenage girls in Exeter in the UK. The teens were later tracked down by police who refused to detail whether or not they'd been cautioned. Kaya's mother Nicole shared images of Kaya's injuries on Facebook. She said that she hoped the pranksters were proud of themselves. A lot of the scary stories on this list come from the customer perspective, but imagine working at a McDonald's and being confronted by this she-demon at number 8. In 2013, CCTV footage of a woman absolutely losing it over chicken nuggets at a McDonald's drive-thru went viral on YouTube and was watched over 2.6 million times. The footage shows a woman acting like a wild animal and trying to attack drive-thru staff at the restaurant in the USA. She screams, and this is my favorite bit, "Don't make me assume my ultimate form!" And then she tries to climb through the drive-thru window. Like, what is that ultimate form? I'm curious, I want to know. As she's shut out of the window, she continues screaming that she wants nuggets, and then she smashes the drive-thru window. It is pretty intense, and I guess like that would be scary if you were working at McDonald's. You're just there, clocking in your hours, and Satan shows up and wants feeding. Blimey. Coming in at number 7, so where do all the creeps hang out? Oh, the McDonald's washrooms, that's where. Good. On the website Darkness Prevails, a 15-year-old from Scotland shared a story about being at a McDonald's toilet when the door to the main washroom area was opened. Thinking nothing of it, the teen continued to use the cubicle when a head popped over the top. A man leered at them in their stool and complimented them on their body. Creepy and so wrong. My goodness, how scary would this be? Okay, you just pop out for a McFlurry like I'm gonna do later, but instead of enjoying a delicious ice cream, you're caught up in a mass brawl. This is what happened here. In March 2016, a fight broke out at McDonald's in Barking in London. The brawl involved 200 people and involved weapons such as knives and baseball bats with nails in them. One person even had acid thrown in their face, which is terrifying. The riot saw 21 people arrested and 3 police officers injured. I really wonder what the trigger was. I thought we needed like a little break from all this scary and horrible stuff on this list, so I'm gonna bring you a little bit of fun at number 5, although this is terrifying to me. A woman claimed to get pregnant by eating McDonald's. That would be enough to put me off it for life. For life. This is actually a happy story, but for those wanting to remain baby-free for the time being, it's pretty scary. Laura Dixon from Essex had been trying to get pregnant for 10 years. Laura was previously a vegetarian, but as she was struggling to conceive with IVF, doctors advised her to get more protein. So like, I don't really eat meat, and I know that there are loads of ways to get protein in my diet. However, Laura decided to hit up McDonald's, and eventually she did fall pregnant. She craved the fast food more than ever. She put on 75 pounds in 35 weeks by eating 6 meals a day. She then birthed her triplets, Mason, Max, and Mia. 35 pounds and 3 babies though, literally my nightmare. Okay, now on to the nastier stuff. I hope you're getting ready for this. Up next, this man choked to death at McDonald's as part of a prank. 29-year-old Darren Bray was on a night out with his friends in Barry, South Wales when he tried to fit an entire 99p cheeseburger into his mouth. Unfortunately, the father of 3 started choking and was unable to dislodge the burger from the back of his throat. He died as his horrified friends watched him. This is a very, very sad story, and there's a sad lesson here. Don't try and stuff a whole McDonald's burger in your mouth at once. Sadder still, at number 3, we have a robbery gone wrong. In May 1992, 3 McDonald's employees were murdered, and a 4th was left with permanent brain injuries as a result of an attack on their location in Sydney River, Canada. 20-year-old Donna Warren, 27-year-old Jimmy Fagan, and 29-year-old Neil Burrows were killed. Arlene McNeil was left with brain damage when 3 armed robbers stormed into the store. Of the robbers, 1 was wearing a chilling Halloween mask. They claimed that they hadn't planned to use any violence and they wanted quick, easy money. Things obviously took a turn for the worse as they stabbed, beat, and shot 4 of the restaurant workers. Coming in at number 2, we have a murderous cult operating in McDonald's. McDonald's was at the center of a cult killing in Shandong, China. 2 members of the Church of Oh My God, a banned Chinese religion, attacked 37-year-old Wu Shoyan when she refused to join their cult. The cult members then called her evil and kicked and stamped on her head in the fast food restaurant until she died there on the spot. Now this was in front of restaurant revelers, and can you even imagine that happening while you were trying to enjoy your chips? Finally, at number 1, we have the worst McDonald's killing in history and one of America's most deadly mass shootings. On July the 18th, 1984, at a San Diego McDonald's, a man shot and killed 21 people. 41-year-old James Huberty was responsible for the 7th deadliest mass shooting in the United States history. Reportedly, 3 days before the shooting, he called a mental health clinic, but they failed to return his call. The next day, he told his wife Etna that his life was over and he went out to eat lunch at McDonald's. He then came home, grabbed his guns, and kissed his wife goodbye before heading out to the San Ysidro location. Here, he mercilessly killed 21 people and injured 19 others. This was all before he was taken down by a SWAT team.
Starting us off at number 10, a Toronto Tim Hortons. This one was posted by a now deleted Reddit account, and they speak about a specific Tim Hortons in the city of Toronto that honestly sounds like it should have been shut down for health code violations. Quote, "Some of us grab at the chance at revenge by spitting in coffee cups, using dirty lids that have cracks and will clearly break and spill all over you in a matter of seconds, or use tea bags that have fallen on the floor and have been smothered by our dirty and sweaty shoes for their tea, as well as putting salt into people's cups instead of sugar. Some people even go as far as blowing their noses and using that same napkin to give to the customer hiding behind a clean one. There are a lot of bad things that have been done by workers to the customers, but they happen to us as well. So listen, I know that fast food workers often get treated so badly by people all day. And from the sounds of this post, they were only ever doing this to retaliate when people were already being rude as hell, but some of this is just straight up disgusting. Next up at number 9, Subway's bread. This next one is definitely not the most disgusting on the list, but it's still a pretty concerning take on our health regulations. The smell of Subway bread is a very distinctly sweet scent that just about anyone who's ever walked through a food court would be able to identify. And wouldn't you know, there is apparently a very predictable reason the one and only Subway bread in particular is so identifiable, and it's because it's well, chocked full of sugar. And by chocked full, I mean sugar makes up roughly 10% of its overall composition. Now, the craziest part of all of that is that in Ireland, even though they still have Subway, their food standards state that any bread sold within its borders must clock in at less than 2% sugar. So they actually don't call it or even really consider it bread. Instead, they are named sub rolls. This all came out when a franchise in Galway, Ireland tried to challenge a takeout food tax, arguing that it didn't apply to his Subway restaurant because bread was a staple food. But 5 judges concluded that Subway bread doesn't count as staple food because it isn't actually bread at all. Next up at number 8, fry oil. When it comes to appliances in fast food kitchens, the deep fryer is working overtime. Truly, that thing is on from the minute they open until the second they close, and you would think, or rather hope, that if something involving that much blistering hot fat was being used that much, it would also be cleaned at least kind of regularly? Apparently not. According to one Reddit user, Worder375, quote, "The fry oil at our place never changed once in the roughly 5 months that I worked there. By the time I left, it was almost black." And it wasn't just at their store. Another user chimed in to agree, saying, quote, "After 43 years in food service, my advice is to cook your own food. I've worked in places that never change out their deep fry oil. Just filter it and add more." Now, I wish I could have lived my life in bliss unaware of this fact, but since I have to know, now so do you. But the real question is, do you think you'll take your chances with the deep fryer next time you're getting fast food? Coming in at number 7, ice cream machine. It's everyone's favorite thing to never order, cause, well, the machine is always broken, or at least that's the story we as the customers always get. According to these next 2 Redditors, they have a lot more going on in their ice cream machine than they want the public to know about. User Silly Bronson wrote, quote, "A coworker dumped mop water through the ice cream machine in an attempt to clean it, like the part where the soft serve goes to freeze." I am not sure what world this employee was living in when they decided this would be a good idea, but one can only hope that it wasn't too black and disgusting when it was poured into the machine. On the other hand, sometimes the ice cream machine can be gross all on its own. According to a now deleted Reddit account, they said, quote, "My daughter worked at a famous fast food drive-in chain and said she was cleaning out the ice cream machine and found a rat at the bottom. So maybe it's for the best that the machine is always broken, otherwise I could be getting mop water or rat-infested ice cream." Next up at number 6, chicken nuggets. If I had to pick my go-to item on a McDonald's menu, it's gotta be the nuggets. So this one hurt a little extra to hear. A Reddit user named D Funkatron, who identifies himself as a former McDonald's employee, recalls one particular day at work where, quote, "I accidentally left a whole bag of about 100 chicken nuggets out on the counter for way too long. They melted into a pool of liquid. I never understood why, but they were completely indiscernible as being the nuggets I once knew." Now, how might that happen? How does frozen meat melt into a pool of alien sludge? Well, some think it's because it's not really proper meat, but rather a mechanically created meat wherein a slurry is created where the bones and carcass of a leftover chicken are mixed together in a food processor. Now, to be clear, McDonald's official stance is that the company does not process any of its meat products in the manner that is described in the mechanically separated chicken story, but if that's true, then honestly, what the hell happened to those frozen chicken nuggets? Coming in at number 5, machine maintenance. One thing that I'm learning today is that the machines in a fast food chain do not really get cleaned as often as one might hope. According to one Reddit user, quote, "When I worked at McDonald's, the orange juice machine was only cleaned when an employee would have some and say, 'This tastes like mold.' I was usually the lucky one. I'm sorry. What? But the gross cleaning practices don't just stop at the orange juice machine. According to another Reddit user, it's all of them. Quote, "The ice machine in every kitchen I've ever worked in is disgusting. They're nearly impossible to clean, requiring a lot of time and disassembly to actually clean them properly. Not to mention that people tend to forget the need for hygiene when it comes to ice. I'm talking about leaving the ice scoop on the floor, not washing their hands, loose hairs floating around there, etc. If it wasn't already dirty because the machine never gets cleaned properly, it's dirty because folks are nasty around the ice. The same goes for every beverage dispenser, mixer, ice cream machine, etc. So apparently, no machine is safe." Coming in at number 4, no customers, no rules. When it comes to fast food, there is, or I guess I should say there is supposed to be, pretty straight and narrow rules and guidelines that all food industry workers have to follow. And while these rules are generally stuck to when customers are there to bear witness, according to another story from BuzzFeed, all these rules and regulations tend to fly out the window the minute employees are alone in the store. At least, where this person worked. Quote, "I worked at a Burger King for 8 years. Whenever the store is getting ready in the morning, before the doors open, none of the food safety rules apply. No gloves, no hand washing, nothing." And it's not just Burger King. Another user echoed this sentiment saying, quote, "I worked at a small bakery. Being sanitary and clean is just for show. In front of customers, we would use paper and gloves to pick up food, but then we would use our bare hands to touch pastries when customers weren't around. Now, I don't even understand this. What is the reason? Who hurt you? Now I will forever be stressed that someone who never washes their hands made my food." Coming in at number 3, don't order the coleslaw. If you thought it couldn't get grosser than that last one, well, I regret to inform you, it will. According to Reddit user Buddy Turner 2014, the worst thing they routinely saw while working at a fast food restaurant was when, quote, "the hairiest men would make coleslaw with no gloves, and for perspective, we would make a giant tub at a time. You're literally armpit deep sometimes in this bin to mix it correctly. Please don't eat the coleslaw." Now, the good news for me is I'm not much of a coleslaw person to begin with, but my condolences to anyone who may have unknowingly eaten some armpit BO and hair-infused slaw out there. Coming in at number 2, a mayo disaster. This next one comes from a now deleted Reddit account, and I have to say, it is actually a bit gobsmacking in terms of the audacity this manager had. The way this entire ordeal was truly 100% avoidable, I mean, well, why don't I just get right into it? Quote, "At one of my first jobs at a fast food chain, my boss and I went to the storage garage to get a big box of mayonnaise. There was a small hole in the box, and when we opened it, a rat had eaten to the middle of the mayonnaise and died. Gross enough, but then my boss scraped out the rat and the mayo around it, then took the rest and served it. I didn't eat there for months." Now, they didn't say what restaurant or where this happened, but all I can think about is the fact that I could have had dead rat mayonnaise at some point in my life. I mean, you'd think when you find a dead animal in the food, you just throw it away. Apparently not. And last up in our number 1 spot today, rotting food. So it's not just potential dead rats or molding machines that could be hiding behind the counters. According to this next story from a BuzzFeed article, some restaurants might actually be serving already rotting food. Quote, "I worked in a pizza chain where the manager would make his own bread. We used them for garlic rolls as well as subs. While making garlic rolls, I noticed mold on them and proceeded to throw them into the trash. The owner decided to take the rolls out and told me to scrape off the mold and freeze them. The customers would never know. All of the vegetables were prepped and frozen, then defrosted in the dirty sinks for subs and pizza. He would make us remove all the bags and store them in a coworker's freezer if the health department came because they were stored in grocery bags. But that's not all. We would freshly slice potatoes for fries, and even if they were rotten, he would make us slice them for customers and wash off the smelly gunk. Dressings would go bad, and he would tell us to mix them with a new bottle so no one would know. There's a lot that goes on behind those doors. I left. I couldn't stomach serving people rotten food. I mean, honest to God, What is wrong with some people?
Starting off at number 10 now, we have The Horror Show. That is the only name I could give to this story, or stories, from Reddit user Bujo01. They said, I watched this really slow guy drool all over the burger he was making. A guy had a scab fall into the bun toaster and get toasted with the bun, so he gave it to the customer. Some really large customer came behind the line and started helping himself to fries with his bare hands, and no one cared but me. I've seen 2 employees having sex on the prep table during the overnight shift. McChickens weren't that popular, so we kept the super old ones for horrible assholes and gave them bad McChickens. Sometimes they had mold on them. I watched a guy hawk down chicken nuggets like it was his business while on shift. I grew 4 pant sizes while working there, and it wasn't puberty. We used to spit on burgers for the really vile customers. I heard of a guy who threw a mouse into the fryer to watch it burn alive. Poor mouse. Some of the fun things we did were made sandwiches with like 10 layers of burger and cheese. We used an entire case of Swiss cheese in a day that resulted in the worst simultaneous constipation bout the world had ever seen. We used the warmer pans as skis. We purposefully squeezed as much grease out of the burgers as possible for one day just to see how much grease we could collect. We even had chicken nugget food fights when we weren't that busy. Sounds like they were very busy. Moving on to number 9 now, we have The Morning After. This one comes from Reddit user Santi Domanti, and it's a reminder of how much trust we put in others when they make food for us. They said Chipotle, hands down. This wasn't really Chipotle's fault, rather an individual employee of Chipotle. This girl I was seeing and I went to Chipotle after class. She got a burrito and I got nachos. Everything was fine until I went to wake her up the next morning, and she literally looked like she was dead. I took her to the ER and they admitted her immediately. She ended up spending almost a week in the hospital and almost died. It turns out someone poisoned the tomatoes and caused half a dozen people to get deathly sick. Luckily, nobody died. Needless to say, I have not been back. Next up at the number 8 spot now, we have the basket of fries. This one came from Julie Baker, who shared it to the BuzzFeed Facebook account. She said, one time I was waiting in line to order when I noticed one of the employees leaning over the French fry bin. They very clearly were getting sick directly into the fries. Another employee ushered that employee away quickly before anyone else could see, and as far as I know, I was the only one who did. But people kept ordering and they were told there would be a wait for fries. I walked right out and called the health board immediately. Coming in at number 7 now, we have the mice. Now here is one from Reddit user Toxic Pink that is almost too crazy to believe, but after researching a bunch of these stories, I unfortunately do have to believe it. They said, I used to work at a fast food place that after a while ended up with a mouse problem. The owners hired someone to come in and take care of them, but he did a poor job. The mice would sometimes get into the traps, but apparently he had also sprayed poison on some other places. If the poison actually killed any of these critters, we never saw those. We did, however, see the ones that were unlucky enough to survive the ordeal and smell them. It would be in the middle of the day and mice would come walking out from under counters or workstations very slowly, and they stunk like death. I called them zombie mice because they smelled like they should be dead. They were gross looking and just moved very lethargically. They also didn't really seem to be afraid of people anymore. I had swept up a couple and tossed them out the back into the grass. I figured they'd probably wander off and die. Others, I think, got tossed into the dumpster. The worst was when I was at the dish station filling orders and my cook was standing in front of her fryers and a mouse fell from the freaking ceiling, almost hitting her on the head. We both freaked out and the thing just kind of stood there. Next up at number 6 now, we have Drink for Two. So for those of our viewers from around the world, Sonic is a drive-through place in North America. Reddit user Random had an experience that may put you off that place even before you go. They said, this actually isn't too gross but horrifying if you don't like spiders. A few years ago I got a Route 44 at Sonic. After finishing the drink, I pulled off the lid to chew on the ice. That's when I discovered a pretty good sized wolf spider that had drowned and was now sitting on top of the ice. I'm guessing it was hiding in the empty cup and accidentally went on a crazy and fateful ride. I wasn't too happy with the situation either. Next up at number 5 now, we have the Panuki. I'm always down to try new flavors of things when they come out. You know, there are some pretty interesting combinations out there. This one is definitely too too far for me though. Reddit user MickeyMon said, once I went to Boston Pizza with my girlfriend and ordered their panuki, which is a pan-sized brownie cookie. My first bite had a mixture of cookie, brownie, and onion. When I told the waitress, she said if it makes you feel any better, it was probably an onion from out of the dishwasher. To which I replied, yes, it makes me feel better that the onion was first on someone else's plate before mine. Our meal was free that day. At number 4 now we have bacon turkey bravo. Although it can be gross when you see a hair or something else in your food, at least you can see that. You know it's there. But what about gross things you can't see? BuzzFeed user Megan K38 said, I used to work at a fast food place during college, and one day the plumbing in the men's room backed up so badly that it overflowed through the drains and into the back of the restaurant where all of the food prep happens. Management decided that wasn't a good enough reason to stop serving people though. So yeah, I was standing in literal poo while I made your bacon turkey bravo that day. Bon appetit. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the lip. Here's a story from behind the counter. It comes from Reddit user Dreamline, who said, I worked at Subway for about 2 years when I was in high school. There was a lady I worked with who I will never forget. Picture this, a 72-year-old woman who constantly coughs up chunks of M&M cookies onto every surface available, including subs. Her and I were chatting in the back of the store once, and while she was talking to me, a chunk of cookie flew out of her mouth and landed on my lip. I almost gagged. She also would wear the same pair of gloves for cleaning, prepping food, and for serving customers. It was disgusting. For some reason, my boss never said anything to her about it. I guess he felt bad that she was so old and still working. Yeah, that one was shocking, gross, and a little bit sad. What a strange mix of emotions there. Moving on to number 2 now guys, we have the Michelin Man. When it comes to scary fast food stories, they don't get much scarier than a life-threatening one. This one came from Reddit user Stella Bella Butterfly. They said, a few months ago I ordered at a local Chinese food place. They claimed to make everything fresh on the spot. So I ordered pad thai with chicken instead of prawns because I am deathly allergic to prawns. I specifically said to the lady at the counter that no prawns were to be anywhere near my food or it may kill me. I get my food home and it smells good. I'm excited to get stuck into it. I was sitting in my dark lounge room with a movie and my food on my lap, and 2 bites in I can feel it happening. My airway is closing and my face is swelling and I start to panic. Thankfully, as I'm scuffling about for the first aid kit looking for an EpiPen with the Australian equivalent of 911 dialed into my phone, my sister happened to come home and saved my ass. A 900 ambulance bill and a night in hospital later, I am alive, although I still resemble the Michelin Man. My parents and sister were furious and were all ready to take them to court, but honestly it could have been as simple as accidental cross-contamination on a cutting board, so I don't want to take down a small local business. I did however go back, still puffy and swollen in the face, to blast the shit out of them and warn them to be more careful, and they offered me free food for a year, but I haven't actually gone back. I'm a little bit terrified to eat Chinese food now. As shocking as that story is, I bet you guys have some very similar allergy stories. And finally, number 1 now, we have the slime. This one comes from Reddit user Up to No Good. It honestly sounds like a Frankenstein story where things just come to life that should never have been alive. They said, I worked at a McDonald's for a little over a year. One of my cleaning tasks, mind you, this is between handing out people's food, was to get down on the floor with a long-handed scrub brush and clean underneath the automatic drink machine. I saw things, man. There were several times I had to peel 3-inch long jelly-like things so covered in mold and slime, I swear they were alive, some kind of worm or something. They wiggled. I'd scrub the black, moldy, inch-thick soda blanket with a heavy combo of lye and degreaser, then I'd jump up and hand someone their food. We complained to management that they couldn't make us handle biohazards and food at the same time. They responded by giving us more stuff to clean. Also, I just remembered when the tubing in the creamer machine busted and whoever broke it just cleaned the visible part, leaving the mess to sit underneath all the stuff on the counter overnight. When we traced the smell back, well, let's just say you're a different person after you spend 2 hours soaking up curdled creamer. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the intercom hack. On December 4th, 2016, a McDonald's intercom intercom got hacked by a prankster. A YouTube video shows the hacker's voice coming out of the speakers and saying, "You know I'm actually on the toilet right now and I'm just going to serve you your food. I'm not even going to wash my hands. I'm trying to get some special sauce out right now." Yeah. After a moment, he then goes on to say, "You know what, just pull forward because I'm going to give you whatever the I feel like giving you." Many people out there online found it quite funny, but as you might expect, McDonald's were pretty mortified. Somehow the hacker gained access to the intercom system by matching its wireless frequency. The company is now trying to make sure this never happens again. Next up at number 9 now, we have hot coffee. In 1992, 79-year-old Stella Liebeck bought a cup of coffee from a drive-thru at McDonald's and spilled it on her lap, burning her. She sued McDonald's and a jury awarded her $3 million in punitive damages. Public opinion on this was divided. Some people thought it was very ridiculous and said, you know, coffee is hot and it's not McDonald's fault that she spilt it. While this is true, there was more to the case. Mrs. Liebeck was not driving when she spilled the coffee. She was a passenger in a car and was trying to remove the lid to add cream and sugar when it tipped and spilt all over her. Back then, McDonald's made their coffee so hot that it gave Mrs. Liebeck third-degree burns that required skin grafts on her inner thighs. Some people say this court case set the precedent for frivolous lawsuits in the US. Coming at number 8 now, we have Mayor McCheese. HR Puffin Stuff was a children's TV series that originally ran in 1969. In 1973, the creators of the show sued McDonald's, claiming the entire McDonald land was a copyright infringement of their show. They claimed that the character Mayor McCheese was a direct rip-off of their character HR Puffin Stuff, himself a mayor. A judge ruled in their favor, and in a later appeals court, the creators were awarded over $1 million. McDonald's were also ordered to stop producing many of the characters and to stop airing commercials featuring them. Moving on to number 7 now, we have pink slime. This is the nickname given to the meat that has been recovered from meat processors. It's also known as mechanically separated meat. Many people said that McDonald's uses this pink slime as the meat for everything they make, whether it's burgers or chicken nuggets, whatever. McDonald's did admit to using this and actually claimed to stop using it in 2011, switching to 100% pure beef instead. They even released a video featuring Mythbusters host Grant Imahara assuring viewers that McNuggets are made of actual chicken. For some people though, the mental image of pink slime will always be associated with McDonald's. Next up at number 6 now, we have strip search scam. In 2004, prank caller David Stewart called a McDonald's in Mount Washington, Kentucky. Donna Summers answered the phone. Stewart told Summers he was a police officer and that she needed to strip search an employee who was a thief. He then gave a description that matched employee Louise Ogborn. Summers strip searched her and performed increasingly strange acts on Ogborn before saying that she had to go back to the counter to work. She handed the phone to her boyfriend Walter Nix, who continued to follow the instructions, which became increasingly worse and surmounted in serious sexual assault. I'm actually not going to include all the details of that here, as some of you might find it distressing. Ogborn later told police that she was scared for her life. When Nix left, he called a friend and simply said, "I have done something terribly bad." Nix received a 5-year prison sentence, while the prank caller was actually found not guilty by a jury, citing a lack of direct evidence. Next up at number 5 now, we have the McLibel. This was the name given to the longest court case in English history. 2 activists were locked in a legal battle with McDonald's for about 7 years. In 1986, Helen Street and David Morris had handed out leaflets accusing McDonald's of encouraging litter, mistreating animals and workers, and destroying rainforests. 4 years later, McDonald's served libel writs on them, demanding they retract their claims and apologize or go to court and prove they were true. Helen and David chose court. The legal fees cost McDonald's over £10 million. In 1997, the judge finally gave his judgment. He rejected claims that McDonald's was to blame for starvation in the Third World or had used lethal poisons to destroy vast areas of Central American rainforest. However, he agreed that McDonald's hadn't been honest with their nutritional labels, they'd exploited children in its advertising, and paid low wages. Next up at number 4 now, we have undercooked. In September 2017, McDonald's came under fire after several incidents linked undercooked burger meat to illnesses in South Korea. This included a mum who said her 5-year-old daughter suffered permanent kidney failure after eating an undercooked patty in a Happy Meal burger. burger. Another group of school children and their teacher allegedly suffered from enteritis, which is an inflammation of the intestine, after eating a McDonald's Bologna burger. Similar cases started being reported until McDonald's career managing director made a statement apologizing for any illnesses caused. They temporarily ceased the sales of the burger pending further investigation. At number 3 now, we have the French fries. In 2002, McDonald's apologized and paid $10 million to vegetarian and religious groups for using beef flavoring in their French fries. The plaintiff said that when McDonald's switched to vegetable oil to cook its fries in 1990, many people assumed they were vegetarian, and McDonald's did not do enough to let people know about the beef ingredients. Before the apology and settlement, Hindu groups attacked a McDonald's in Bombay. A lawyer who filed the first lawsuit on behalf of 16 million Hindus and vegetarians said, "I am not happy with the $10 million and I wish I could do better in terms of money." Next up at number 2 now, we have cheap labour. To say McDonald's has had a strained relationship with some of its workforce would be an understatement. The low wages and long hours have started to put a real strain on many workers, and in November 2012 it reached a boiling point when workers in New York started to go on strike. In Brazil, McDonald's has been accused of mistreatment of pregnant employees, poverty level pay and wage theft. In some parts of the US, McDonald's has been accused of making guest workers take 25-hour shifts without taking a break. Some experts think it's only a matter of time before a major labour lawsuit is presented to the company. And finally at number 1 now, we have racism. In January 2015, 10 former McDonald's employees filed a lawsuit against the company saying they were fired by their supervisors because there were too many black people working there. The lawsuit alleges that high-ranking supervisors in 3 different branches would make degrading comments about working in the ghetto store. One of the claimants, Willie Betts, said, "All of a sudden they let me go for no other reason than I didn't fit the profile they wanted at the store. I had no idea what they meant until I saw everyone else that they fired as well." The owner of one of the branches is black and told the media that discrimination has nothing to do with the firings. He didn't comment much more except to say he's not at liberty to discuss issues regarding employment or termination. McDonald's has said that this is an issue for the individual franchise owners of the stores. The lawsuit hopes to shift that responsibility to them so they will do more to fight discrimination.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the close call. This story was posted to Reddit by Kane55, and they wrote, quote, "This particular night I had run out of burritos and chicken. I also shut the thing down and cleaned it all out about an hour before closing. About 5 minutes before I was closing up, a guy walked in and asked for some burritos. I told him I was out of them and that I was just about to close and the fryers were shut down. He walked around the store for a minute. I assumed he was looking for something else to buy, and then he came up to the counter, pulled out a weapon and told me if I didn't cook him some burritos, he was going to harm me. I freaked out, but I told him I had none to cook. I showed him the freezer and told him I would happily cook anything he wanted from it, but I was out of burritos. He looked in it for a minute, turned to me and said, 'You really are out.' I replied, 'Yeah.' He then put the weapon away and left the store." In our number 9 spot today, we have the bad driver. This story was posted to Reddit by the user novelty_bone, and they wrote, quote, "There was the time a woman drove her car into the 7-Eleven I worked overnights at. All started when a guy no-called, no-showed again. I get called in so the guy doesn't have to work 24 hours straight. Goes well, I'm tired, counting cash, 4 a.m., and all of a sudden I hear a loud noise behind me. Then the rack of cigarettes behind me rains down on me like a waterfall. Once the cigarettes stopped, I used colorful language to ask what was happening, to myself, but out loud, and go check outside. There's a Jeep pulled back into the spot. I check if the driver's okay, and she is, but I hear through her phone that didn't seem to be on speaker, 'How the bleep did you crash into a 7-Eleven?' So I call the cops and the owner. It all gets worked out, but when the cops arrived, they first laughed, then breathalyzed and alphabet tested the woman to see if she was intoxicated. She was not, just a tired/bad driver. I'm betting bad based on the phone call I overheard." In our number 8 spot today, we have the terrifying encounter. This Reddit story was posted by the user I am working AMA, and they started off their story by explaining that they had a lot of regulars who seemed to be going through difficult times and maybe struggling from some substance use issues, but that most of them weren't troublesome or violent. They go on to write that one of these regulars comes into the store where they work and he, quote, "wanders around the aisles, occasionally looking over and staring at me for 10 seconds or so each time. After the last customer leaves, he comes up and pulls out a small pocket blade, the Swiss Army kind, looks at me and says, 'I was supposed to do something very bad to you, but I decided not to, I think,' all while opening and closing this
thing. Robbing me is one thing, but this guy just directly threatened my life. At this point, the man now hands them the thing. Just hands it over and says, "Hold on to this for me." He then looks around for a bit and then asks for it back. Of course, the instinct is to not give it back, but at the same time, this man is also much larger than the employee, so they decided not to cause any more trouble and just give it back. From there, the man just told them to keep their eyes open, and then he left. In our number 7 spot today, we have the scary customer. This Reddit story was posted by the user Morthern, and they wrote, quote, "I work night shifts. During the weekdays, it's pretty quiet, usually only the truckers and taxi drivers who pop by for coffee and the sandwiches that we have. But one night, I was talking with one of the cab drivers. A car drives into the parking lot, parks, and it sits with its floodlights on bright, aimed towards the glass front. Kinda weird, but maybe the guy forgot what light he got on. It happens. The guy finally enters after maybe 5 minutes of flooding the store part with light, and it's obvious he's on something. He's jittery, wide-eyed, looks disheveled, paces around before he buys a coffee, and stares intensely at me throughout the purchase. Worth mentioning, I'm a 5'2" chick and I smile friendly to everyone, but I work alone for 8 hours in the dead of night. Eerie guy pays for his coffee without a single word, so I continue talking with the cab driver, but I still feel this guy staring at me. It was very intense and unsettling. Cab guy probably notices this and leans on the counter, slides his card over while talking a bit hushed that I should call him when I get off work if this guy sticks around because he's getting very creepy vibes from him. Cab guy was right. This guy stuck around the shop for about an hour till closing, just staring at me until some truckers arrived, then he left and sat in his car, parked up against the window, staring until closing time. I called the driver and he gave me a free ride home. He later told me this weirdo had been driving behind his taxi with his lights on full power. In our number 6 spot today, we have the mouthwash. This Reddit story starts off at a store in Missouri. The poster wrote, quote, "Had a guy in our parking lot doing what looked to be Tai Chi at 1 a.m. He would do the motions, then kickflip off the side of the building and go back to doing the motions. We told him he needed to stop doing that. He goes to the pump, takes the nozzle off, buzzes for inside pay, chooses a grade of fuel, and splashes it in his mouth. He spits it out, chooses another grade, and then does it again. This is the point where we called the cops. After he decided he was done mouthwashing with fuel, he comes in and just starts loading up with bags of chips, candy bars, a single 12-ounce Bud Light from a 6-pack. Half of the stuff was opened. Cop got there, told the guy he had to pay, then put him in the back of his car. That would have been quite an eventful and also kind of a horrifying night shift. In our number 5 spot today, we have this string of thefts. In the early hours of Wednesday morning back in March of this year, a series of harrowing events unfolded across Chicago as armed robberies targeted multiple 7-Eleven stores. The police were unable to confirm any direct links between the robberies, but a very clear pattern emerged, with the suspects escaping in a black SUV, leaving residents and businesses on edge. Julianne Logan, a resident of the West Loop, expressed her unease, stating, quote, "It makes me feel unsafe knowing that I could just be at 7-Eleven and something could happen." One of the affected stores, located at the intersection of Morgan and Monroe Streets, had transitioned to accepting credit cards only as a result of being one of the 4 establishments targeted by the armed robbers. In one incident, 2 armed male suspects stormed the 7-Eleven, announcing a robbery and seizing cash from 2 registers. They further made off with a customer's black Jeep Cherokee, escaping in the stolen vehicle. Another robbery occurred on West Crenshaw Street, and a 3rd incident unfolded on West Towie Avenue. The final robbery took place on Northwestern Avenue, where the same pattern repeated itself. 2 armed individuals, cash stolen, and a swift escape in a black SUV. Although no injuries were reported, thankfully, the lack of apprehension in connection with these crimes has heightened concerns. Area 3 detectives were left to piece together the puzzle, conducting a very thorough investigation. In our number 4 spot today, we have the weird regular. This story was posted by the Reddit user Smalls244, and they wrote about working at a store in a really small town. They then go on to explain that they would often have a customer at the store who had a glass eye and who would walk around with a 5-gallon bucket of pickled pig's feet. Quote, "The pig's feet were submerged in this pink juice that would splash all over the damn place when he walked around. Not to mention that during the summer, the bucket would reek. So one of my first days on the job, he came into the gas station to by a tall boy Bud Ice. I rang him up and he plunged his hand down into the bucket and pulled out a pig's foot in which he slammed onto the counter. After a bit of back and forth explaining that pig's feet were not a form of currency, I just gave in and let him have the $2 beer. I paid for it myself. So about once a week he would walk in and we would have this pickled pig foot Bud Ice understanding. Other customers in line would lose their minds after seeing this deal go down. I'd throw the pig's feet in the woods out back where the stray cats would eat them. It was a whole ecosystem of weirdness. In our number 3 spot today we have the creepy customer. This creepy story posted to Reddit by user Heavy Blossoms is just another reminder of the terrifying world of social media. They wrote, quote, "I go by my nickname at work and have my real name on Facebook. A customer found and friend requested me somehow. I used to think it was my name on the receipt, but I'm more inclined to think he looked up the business and went through the members/likes/whatever section, hundreds of people, until he found me. He sent me a message that said, 'You work at business name. I was there last night.' I never responded." This story is short, but leaves me with absolute chills. There is something seriously strange about that entire situation. In our number 2 spot today we have the emergency button. This is a story about something that would have been great for the employee to know before being in a terrifying situation. Posted to Reddit by the user Skeever2, they explained that this is something that happened to their friend. While working a shift, they had the unfortunate experience of having someone begin attempting to rob the store. A true nightmare, so scary, an awful situation. They of course press the emergency button under the counter. This seems great until they realize that this button locks the door, which means that they are now locked inside the store with the now panicking armed assailant. They finish off their post by writing, quote, "His boss later told him it was to prevent people from getting away. I mean, it did also put in a call to the alarm company who eventually called the police, but for a good 25 minutes he really thought he was going to die there. In the end it seems like he was totally unharmed, so thank goodness for that, but what a crazy story." And finally, in our number 1 spot today we have the missing assailant. This is a creepy story that happened actually quite recently. Late in the evening on the night of May 10th, 2023, the 7-Eleven convenience store in Port Colborne fell victim to a harrowing incident. At precisely 11:13 p.m. the tranquility of the night shattered as a masked intruder stormed through its doors wielding a menacing weapon. The startled employees watched in terror as the glass case shattered under the assailant's violent demands for money. Fear gripped the hearts of the workers, but they complied, handing over an undisclosed sum to the thief. With his ill-gotten gains in hand, the intruder swiftly fled the scene, disappearing into the shadows of a nearby alley, leaving behind a wake of disbelief. Thankfully, no customers or employees suffered physical harm during the ordeal. Despite the swift response from the Niagara Regional Police Service, the elusive suspect managed to evade capture so far. Determined to bring justice to the traumatized convenience store staff, the tenacious detectives from the 3rd District Welland Detective Office, aided by the skilled investigators from the Forensic Services Unit, took charge of the case. Their diligent efforts now focused on unraveling the identity and whereabouts of this very mysterious and scary robber. As the investigation unfolds, hope remained high that the expertise of these dedicated law enforcement professionals would lead to the apprehension of the culprit, providing solace to the community shaken by this chilling encounter.
Starting off this disgusting list in at number 10 with chili. I mean, everyone loves to eat a nice warm bowl of chili. Well, most people, not me. But did you know that the chili is made from old hamburger patties? I mean, what's worse is that Wendy's chili is made up from the meat on the grill that expires and dries up, and then it's put into the warming drawer until they have enough for a batch of chili. This has to be a joke. What is going on here? And if the chili is just sitting in the warming device, if it doesn't sell fast enough, they have to add hot water to keep it warm and to mix it up again. So no idea what's going on with Wendy's, but we have the 5-second rule, and this comes into number 9. Remember when you were growing up and you dropped a piece of food on the floor and you thought it was okay to eat it as long as you pick it up within 5 seconds? Well, apparently the 5-second rule is followed in a bunch of popular food chains too. I mean, just imagine if your Big Mac got dropped on the dirty floor and the employee was like, 5-second rule applies here, right? And then they still decided to serve it to you? I mean, that's not cool. Alright, so moving on, employees don't always wash their hands, and this brings us to number 8. There are always signs in fast food restaurants' bathrooms that state that all employees must wash their hands before returning to work. Well, as it turns out, not all employees wash their hands before they return to flipping burgers and putting the topping on with their bare hands. It's actually pretty disgusting when you think about it, especially in Subway if they don't wash their hands and they're not wearing gloves. I mean, where did you get your training from? Alright, moving on to number 7, we're talking about those lovely grill marks on your burger. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's the sign that your burger was cooked to perfection. Well, I hate to be the one to burst your bubble, but those grill marks aren't real. They were put there by a factory. So if you want real grill marks on your patty, your best bet is to make your own at home on your nice clean grill, because a fast food restaurant isn't gonna make it for you. Up next, at number 6, burgers are literally made in an instant. The expected turnaround time for cooking a burger is about 30 seconds. I mean, think about that for a second. 30 seconds. It takes me longer to decide what I want to order off the menu. The largest fast food chains have cooking burgers down to a science. Take McDonald's for example. Their grill has 2 sides, so it takes them 38 seconds to cook a double cheeseburger. This is slightly concerning to me. And now number 5 is the amount of time a cooked burger sits before being served. After fast food restaurants cook something, they put it in a holding cabinet and they set a timer. Seems legit, right? Wrong. When the timer goes off, they're supposed to throw out the food. Why? Because of E. coli. That's why. Well, instead of following the proper health and safety regulations, they will simply reheat the food. If you guys want a somewhat fresh meal and not those old burgers, you should go to a fast food restaurant between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. or 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. That's when they make it the freshest. Apparently. You're basically drinking bleach, and this comes into number 4. Most fast food chains will clean everything with highly concentrated chemicals at the end of each day, which is good to a certain extent because it is killing all of the viruses, but it can also be harmful. That's because they use these harsh chemicals on the grills and on the drink machine nozzles as well. So if you're one of the first customers in the morning, you're in for one surprise. You're probably ingesting some of those harmful chemical residues. And number 3, your drink might be dirtier than a toilet. Those ice machines and drink dispensers are actually very difficult to clean, so they are actually a breeding ground for bacteria and germs. There was a study done that compared the bacteria content in ice water and toilet water. I'm not sure who's doing these comparisons, really weird, but it was taken at fast food restaurants, and it was discovered that 70% of the time, ice from fast food restaurants was dirtier than the toilet water. And in most cases, the ice tested positive for E. coli bacteria, which comes from human waste. Alright, so I think I'm going to be sticking to bottles of water for now on, but I bet you someone's gonna tell me that's even dirtier. Sometimes gross things will sneak into your food, and this comes into number 2 unfortunately. Back in 2013, a teenager made a shocking discovery while he was eating his Kentucky Fried Chicken. While he was picking apart his chicken, he found what looked like to be a fried chicken brain in his bucket of chicken. I mean, is this real life right now? He reported it to the food chain, who apologized for the incident, but the company's corporate office thinks it was actually a chicken kidney and not a brain. Does that make things a little better? Like, I don't think so. I don't want chicken anything. I don't want chicken kidney, chicken brain, chicken liver. I just want my chicken wings. If it wasn't bad enough, in at number 1, we have employees tampering with your food. One employee at Jack in the Box decided to add his own special sauce to a police officer's burger. Oh my goodness, this can't be good. His special sauce was him blowing his nose into the burger. That's actually so disgusting. Well, he was arrested obviously for aggravated assault, adding a harmful substance to the food, and disorderly conduct. If I was that police officer, I would sentence him away to 10 years, because you need a long time to think about what you just did.